Are y'all ready for this? We're doing STAAR Algebra 1 for the May 2021 test, which was, we're doing part 2 today. And part 2 is going to be starting with problems 17 through 34. And we'll go through each problem step by step and work through the solutions. You may pause the test at any time to try to work the problems out on your own, and then play the video to see if you got the right answer and see if it's done a different way. Leave any comments there if you work out a problem a different way. Maybe your way is better than mine. There's the formula chart. You have the reference materials. There's formulas for factoring, properties of exponents, linear equations, quadratic equations. If you need to refer to these, they will be provided for you, so you don't have to memorize any of these, but you do have to know how to use them. Okay, so problem number 17 says a table of values shows a linear relationship with x and y. What is the slope of the line represented by the table of values? So we need to find slope. Remember that slope is the difference in the y's, y2 minus y1, over x2 minus x1. So what we can do here is we can take any of the y's. We can take this y minus that one. We can do 9 minus 1. And then if we do that, we can take this x minus that one. We're going to have a negative 7 minus a minus 2, which would make that a plus 2. So 9 minus 1 is 8 in the numerator. And negative 7 plus 2 is a negative 5. And so for number 17, negative 8 over 5, the answer should be A. And can you check this a different way? Yes, you can check. You can do it a different way. And so we'll go ahead and show you another way. Is we could take this one minus this one. Negative 7 minus a minus 15. That would be plus 15. And then we would take 3 minus 8 for the denominator, difference in the x's. And so you're going to have 15 minus 7, that's 8 over negative 5. Still negative 8 over 5. So these aren't the only ways. There's other ways to do it, but it's a good way that you can check this different ways. So the answer for number 17 was A, negative 8 over 5. Okay, number 18 says, which expression is a factored form of 2x squared minus 25x plus 63? So if we take a look at the 2x squared, we could multiply the first with the first there, and the first with the first. They're all going to give us that 2x squared. So that's not going to help a whole lot. So let's try looking at the 63. So 63 is going to be 7 times 9. So you could multiply 9 times 7, negative 9 times negative 7, 7 times 9, or negative 7 times negative 9. And those will give you 63. So I think what we have to do is we have to look at the outer and inner to come up with the middle term, which is going to be the negative 25x. So to come up with the negative 25x, we can multiply the outer here would be 7x. Let me see, I think I've got the wrong marker here. Let me see. So, okay, 7x. Okay, so I went ahead and wrote down the outer and the inner. So on answer F, the outer is x times 7, which is 7x, and the inner gives us the 18x. And we're looking for a minus 25x. So when you add those two, that's not going to work. For answer G, the outer would be x times minus 7, minus 7x, and minus 9 times 2x, minus 18x. And when you add those together, it does give you the minus 25x. So I think this should be the answer. And then x for H, if you take the outer, it'd be 9x plus 14x. That doesn't give you that. So that one's not correct. And this one is also not correct. So the correct answer is G. Now, if we take a look at answer G, and we have x minus 9 equals 0, that means that x equals to 9 should be one of the zeros. And 2x minus 7 equals to 0. That means that 2x, if I add 7 to both sides, 2x equals 7. And then 7 divided by 2 is 3.5. So one way that you could check this is that you could graph this equation, and then you could come up with these answers. Look for the zeros on the graph or in the table. When x is 9, y is 0. And when x is 3.5, y is 0. So those would be your x-intercepts. And if that's correct, then answer G is correct. This is another way of checking. This is a way of using your calculator to check on this particular problem. And there's many other ways of doing this one. Okay, so for number 19, it says, what is the equation in standard form? Standard form would be like ax plus by equals to a constant c. And so the equation here is 8x plus 3y equals to 15. And so we're looking for a line that passes through the point 6, -1 and is parallel to a line represented by 8x plus 3y equals 15. Parallel means the same slope. And so we're looking for something, if it's in standard form, we're looking for something that has 8x plus 3y equals to some number other than 15. It could be 17, it could be 27, it could be 35, it could be 45. Any number as long as you have 8x plus 3y, and that's equal to a constant. And so that would give you parallel lines. So A and B have to be the same in the same ratio in order to be parallel. So answer A says 8x plus 3y equals to -45. So that line is parallel. So it could be A. Put a little question mark. I don't think it could be B, 8x minus 3y. We have 8x plus 3y, so this one's going to be eliminated. It could be C. It cannot be D, 8x minus 3y. That's not going to be parallel. So we're left with either A or C. But remember that it has to go through this point 6, -1. So then we can substitute for x and y, 6, -1, into either equation. So if we take answer A, 8 times the value of x, which was 6, plus 3 times the value of y, which is a -1, and see if that gives you -45. 48 minus 3 is 45, not a -45, so it can't be A, but it is C, because 8 times 6 is 48, and then 48 minus 3 equals to 45, and that was the correct answer. So for number 19, the answer should be C. You could also graph this equation, and you could graph the answers, and make sure that when you look at the table of values, it includes the point 6, -1. And that means that point is on that line, and that would be your answer. So on number 20, the graph of a linear function h is given, as shown on the grid. And given that f of x equals to x, and h of x is some number a times f of x, what is the value of a? Okay, so we need to find a multiplier that would give us this graph. So if you have y equals to x, that's the same thing as f of x equals to x. And this one has a slope of 1. Now, if you have h of x is equal to a times f of x, this is our new one, h of x, then there's something that's being multiplied times original. So this one is, a is actually the slope of the given line. So what they're really asking for in a very disguised manner is, what is the slope of this line that's given? What is the slope of the given line? And so a happens to be the slope. So how do you find the slope? Well, we can take y2 minus y1. The y here is 8, so we can do 8 minus a minus 4. That would be plus 4. And then 10 minus, difference in the x is 10 minus a minus 5. That would be plus 5. So 8 plus 4 is 12. And 10 plus 5 is 15. So it looks like the answer is 12/15. Can we reduce that? Yes, you can reduce that. Or, as a matter of fact, if you don't want to reduce, you can take your calculator and take 12 divided by 5, and that would be 0.8. So you can record your answer and bubble in and put 0.8. Or 4/5 would also be correct if you were to write 4/5. It might be easier to take the calculator and divide that one out. And the answer was 0.8 for number 20. Number 21, a conservation agency tracks the sea turtle population by counting the number of nesting sites where the turtles lay their eggs. The table shows the numbers of nesting sites for several years since 2001. The data can be modeled by an exponential function. So in this problem, we're working with an exponential function, and the answers are all an exponential function. And so we want to see, first of all, let's take a look at the data here. After 2001, 1 year later, you have 46,000. Then it goes down to 37,900, almost 38,000, 40, 29,000, 34,000, 31,000, 27,600. So is the number of nesting sites increasing or decreasing? Well, it's not consistent because it goes up a couple of years and goes down, but overall, this is decreasing. And so that would be our first clue. This is decreasing. And so if you have an exponential function, a times b to the x, and so b is your multiplier, and if b is less than 1, it's decreasing. So here b is 1.08. That would be increasing. So I don't think it's a. It could be b. C is 25. B is 25,956. That'd be your multiplier every year. That's huge. That would be way out of line. And so is D. Now the one that makes sense the most is answer B. And so what you can do is graph that on the calculator and look at the table of values and see that it matches up with this table right here. So look at the table of values on the calculator. Or another thing you can do is you can just substitute for 1 here, 0.93 to the first power times that, and it gives you this number. And then 0.93 squared times 46,797, it gives you that number. And you just plug in the numbers and you get all these answers, and the answer was B. So main thing, this is a exponential function. It is decreasing, and the only answer that makes sense here is answer B. You can check with your calculator to verify. So for problem number 22, a part of a linear function g is graphed on the grid. And they want to know which inequality best describes the domain and the range. So remember, the domain is going to be the x values and the range is the y values. And so we need to find which inequality best describes. If you look at the endpoints here, they're solid. That means they're including. So if they include the endpoints, it would be less than or equal to. That means it includes the endpoints. If it did not include those, if you had a little open dot there, it would be just less than. So let's look at the x values. Right here, the x value there is -7, and here it goes up to 6. So we're looking at a domain from -7 to 6, and we want to include those. So let's look at the domain values. I don't think f makes sense, -4 to 5. -7 to 6g, except it's less than, it's not including the endpoints, so I don't think that's the correct answer. H is -4 to 5. How about J? j is going from -7 to 6, including those using less than or equal to on both endpoints. So it looks to me like j is the correct answer. Now, just to make sure, we're going to check for the range. Now, the range is the y values, okay? And so if you go to the y-axis and you draw a line here, that's at 5, including that, and this one goes to -4. So the y values would be from -4 up to, we said 5, including the endpoints. So -4 to 5, is that what it says here? Yeah, that is correct. So the answer here is J. And so this could have been done correctly, just looking for a domain, just looking for the x values. And so I used the red for domain and I used the yellow to find the range. And so the answer was J for number 22. Okay, so problem number 23, which value of x is the solution to this equation? 3x squared minus 30x minus 72 equals to 0. Well, you can graph this equation on your calculator and you can look at the table of values, or you can find the zeros and you can do it that way. But what we want to do is go ahead and solve this, see if we can factor this. I notice that we can divide each term divided by 3, since you have multiples of 3 here, and we can simplify this problem. 3x squared divided by 3 is x squared. And minus 30 divided by 3 would be minus 10x. And then 72 divided by 3, that's 24, so it's minus 24 equals to 0. And then we can factor this out. X squared would be x times x. And then factors of 24, where their difference, since it's negative 24, we need a plus here and a minus here. And 12 minus 2 is 10, so maybe we can use 12 here and a 2 there. This is 2x. This is a minus 12x. That gives us the minus 10x in the middle. So if x plus 2 equals to 0, then that means that x is equal to negative 2. And if x minus 12 is equal to 0, that means that x equals to 12. So there's two answers, and you can get both of these on the calculator, looking for the table, looking for the zeros. So x is negative 2, y is 0. And when x is 12, y is 0. These are known as the x-intercepts. Also, x is the solution. So do we see a negative 2? There's no 12, but there is a negative 2. So the answer for 23, x equals to negative 2. Now, a quick way of checking, a student might take these answers and substitute them back into the equation, and you should get 0. So if you substitute a negative 2 for x, you will get 0, and that's one way that you can check this problem. So the answer was C. Number 24, you have a table of ordered pairs representing some points on the graphs of lines F and G. So you have two lines, F and G, and you have the points, ordered pairs that are given for each one. And then they're going to ask which system of equations represents F and G. Okay, I noticed that for F, answer F and answer G, those two are the same. And also I noticed that for answers H and J, those two are the same. So using the given information for F, we could find the slope for line F. So the slope for line F, we can say y2 minus y1. We could do 10.5 minus 7. We're taking this one minus that one, divided by 4 minus 2. Difference in the x's. And so the slope here is going to be 3.5 over 2, which is 1.75. So we know the slope for line F is 1.75. Okay, so that means it's either F or G. So we can now eliminate the last two answers, H and J, because we know the slope has to be 1.75. Now what we need to do is find the slope for line G. So I'm going to do y2 minus y1, 4 minus 0. And then I'm going to do negative 3 minus the minus 2. So negative 3 minus the minus 2 is a plus 2. So I'm going to have 4 over negative 1. So the slope for the second equation is a negative 4. And so both of them have negative 4 slope. But I noticed that they have a different intercept. So is it f or g? Well, let's say if x is negative 2, y is 0. So if I substitute into this one, if x equals to negative 2, y is 0. And see if it checks. Negative 4 times negative 2 is 8, and 8 minus 8 is 0. So this one checks out, so the answer should be F. Now, maybe the easiest way to do this is with your calculator, graph the two lines, F, for answer F, graph 1.75x plus 3.5, and graph the second line, y equals negative 4x minus. Look for the table of values, and you will see that F is the correct answer. You can also plug in values for those. Now, this test is not a speed test, and so you need to take your time on problems like this. There's no hurry. It is a little bit time consuming, but you can get this right using your calculator and going through all the steps. That was for problem number 24, and the answer was F. So for number 25, the graph of a linear function is shown on the grid. What is the rate of change of y with respect to x? What are we looking for? Rate of change is a slope. So another slope question. And so we're going to take the difference in the y's over the difference in the x's. And that is in your formula chart if you need it. And so what we need to do is you could do rise over run. Is the slope positive or negative? Well, if it's going down, left to right, we know that this is a negative slope. So we can eliminate this one and this one because those are positive slopes. So it's either negative 7/9 or negative 3/4. Okay? So what we can do is we can use the, we can use the yellow highlighter here, and we can go this way and then this way and count the number of squares there. And if we do it that way, we're going to have, let's see, from 4 to negative 4, this looks like 8. So you're going from 4 to negative 4. So really what we're doing is we're subtracting the x values from negative 4 to 4. This is 8. And then for the y values, we're going from 1 to 7. So this is 7. Is this, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And then this one goes 1, 2, 3, 4. Another way of doing this is we can take this point here as being 4, 1. And this point over here being, looks like negative 4, 7. Okay. So difference in the y's then is 7 minus 1 over negative 4 minus 4. That would be 6 over negative 8, which reduces to negative 3/4. So for number 25, it looks like the answer should be D. This is not a 7. From 1 to 7, that was actually a 6. So 6 over 8 gives us a 3/4 negative slope. So the answer was negative 6/8, and which reduces to a negative 3/4. So there's different ways to do this, whatever is easier for you. It might be easier to find these points that are given here and then subtract the y's and subtract the x's, and that'll give you your slope. Difference in the y's over difference of the x's. And that was for number 25. Number 27, what is the value of the y-intercept for the graph g of x equals to 73? So if you have y, we'll call g of x y, 73. This is an exponential function. 4/5 is b, is your multiplier, and then raised to the x. When x is 0, what is y? So to find the y-intercept for any problem, whether it's exponential, linear, quadratic function, any function, you say when x is 0, what is y? That will give you the y-intercept. Okay, so you'll see this question in different forms, but here we're looking for the y-intercept. So 4/5 of the 0 is 1, and then so what you have here is 73 times 1, which is 73. And so the answer here was 73. You record your answer, fill in the bubbles, and you're ready to go on to the next one. Number 28. The graph of y equals x squared is reflected. So we know that it's reflected over the x-axis. So normally y equals x squared, it looks like that, but we're going to reflect it across the x-axis, so it's going to be upside down, like that. So now we know it can't be that one, it can't be that one, so it's either G or J. Now also notice that it is stretched horizontally to create this new function. So horizontally is in the x direction, so we're going to stretch it out this way, and so it becomes wider, like that, and that's the stretch horizontal. So the answer should be J. Number 29, which expression is equivalent to this? So an equivalent expression, you can multiply 3/2 times 1/2. That would be 3/4 p squared. P times p is p squared. So we need an answer that has 3/4 p squared. So it could be C or D, but it cannot be A or B. So right away, we've eliminated those two. And then if you multiply 1 times 3, the last with the last, they both have 3. So it's going to come down to the outer and the inner. And so we're going to have, for the outer is 3/2 times 3, that's 9/2 p, plus 1 times 1/2, that's 1/2. So that would be 10/2 p. 9/2 plus 1/2 is 10/2. 10/2 is actually 5p. So we need 5p for the middle term. So the answer is C for number 29. Now, you could plug some numbers in for p and run it through the answers. If you do not want to do this, you could say, what if p is equal to 1.5? And then come up with a numerical answer here when you plug in p, and then you run it through each of the answers, and it turns out that answer C works. These other answers will not work. And so that's one way of checking your work if you want to use your calculator. You can also graph those. The graph of this expression, if you graph y is equal to 3/2 x plus 1 and 1/2 x plus 3, and then graph this one, the graphs will match up and be the same graph. Those are a few ways of doing this. There's more ways, but whichever one is easier for you is the way to do it. Okay, problem number 30 is an inequality. Which inequality is best represented by the graph? So we're looking at inequality. We have a dashed line. So dashed line would be less than. So a dashed line means you're going to have less than. And if it's a solid line, then that means it would be less than or equal to. So we're looking at a dashed line. So that rules out F because it has less than or equal to, and it rules out H because it has less than or equal to. So it's either G or J. So is it 4x plus 7y less than 49, or is it 7x plus 4y less than 28? Well, what we can do is right here, you have an x-intercept at 4, 0. And right here at the top, you have a y-intercept at 0, 7. So if we look at answer G, if x is 0, y is 7, so this point works. But if y is 0, x will not be 4, so it can't be that. So let's plug both of those points into answer J, and you will see that if y is 0, x is 4. 7 times 4 is 28. And if x is 0, y is 7, so that works. You can also graph this on your calculator and make sure it looks like this one, and it crosses here at 4. It crosses the y-axis at 7. And so 0, 7 is your y-intercept, and 4, 0 is your x-intercept. So the answer has to be J. Okay, so we're on number 31. Which situation best shows causation? So let's take a look at the answer choices. The length of a rectangle affects the width. I don't think so. They're independent of each other, different lengths, different widths. So I don't think it's going to be answer A. The amount of time a cell phone is used affects the charge of the battery. I think if you have a cell phone or you heard of somebody, their battery is going down the more they use their cell phone. So this one makes a lot of sense, but let's look at the other answers here. Answer C, the number of ice cream bars sold affects the number of milkshakes sold. Those are independent of each other. They're not related. If they're selling ice cream bars, that doesn't determine the number of milkshakes. So that one doesn't make sense. Answer D, the number of soccer balls a team owns affects the number of games the team wins during the soccer season. Well, if that was the case, they wouldn't need a scoreboard. They would just buy more soccer balls and win the game. That does not make sense. Who has more soccer balls wins. That's not how they keep score in soccer. So the correct answer was B. The amount of time a cell phone is used affects the charge of the battery. And that's causation, number 31. So for number 32, which expression is equivalent to 16w squared plus 24w plus 9? And this is actually a perfect square trinomial. And if you see the answers, they're all something being squared. Well, to get 16w squared, you need a 4w and a 4w squared. So 8w squared is 64w, so that's not going to work, that's not going to work. So right away, we've eliminated two answers, and we're down to F and G. Now, because this is a plus sign here, the middle term has to be plus, so it has to be 4w plus 3. And what we're going to do is we're going to square 4w plus 3 to check and confirm our answer. So 4w times 4w, we got the 16, and the 9 comes from 3 times 3. But the middle term is going to come from the outer and the inner using FOIL. So 4w times 3 is 12w. And 3 times 4w is another 12w. And when you add those, that gives you that 24w. So the answer then was F. And you can check this with a calculator. You can graph this one here and graph this one here and line them up. They're exactly the same. You can also substitute for W a number, 1, 1.5, 2, and then match them up with the answers. And it'll take some time, but if you take your time on this one, all of you should get this one correct. Number 32, the answer was F. Okay, so for number 33, which graph best represents a function with a domain of all real numbers less than, so we're looking for x values, domain, that is less than or equal to, 6. So you can't have any x values that are more than 6. I'm looking at this one here, that's more than 6, that's not allowed. Less than 6, 6 is over here, that doesn't make sense. This 6 is over here, less than 6 would be this way. That's not correct. Well, we're down to A. And of course, right in here, you've got 6. So everything, all the x values less than or equal to 6, the answer has to be A. So you look at all the x values here, they're either 6 or less. And so the domain is the x values, and we want everything less than or equal to 6. So that means there could be nothing to the right of 6. The answer is A for this one. That was for number 33. Okay, we're down to the last one here, number 34. And make sure that you subscribe to this channel if you want to see the rest of the videos, and hit the bell for notifications. Hit the like button also. That helps the YouTube algorithm. So our last one in this video is number 34. And it's a quadratic function h. It can be used to model the height in feet of a rocket from the ground t seconds after it's launched. The graph of the function is shown. So at time 0, it's still at 0. It hasn't gone up yet. And at time 7.5, it's back to ground level 0. And so notice that at 1.5 seconds, it's traveled 144 feet. And also at 6 seconds. So right down the middle is a line of symmetry right here. And if they were asking at what time does it hit the maximum, it's going to be the average of 0 and 7.5. 7.5 divided by 2, it's going to take 3.75 seconds to hit the maximum value up here, the peak, which is like the vertex. So they're not asking at what time. What are they asking for? They're asking for the maximum value. The maximum value is over here on the y-axis, the maximum height. So what is the maximum height right here? If you go all the way across, it's 225. And so all you have to do is find the maximum height. 225 is the maximum height, and that was the answer. 225. And you would just bubble in your answer. So all you have to do is just look at the maximum peak, go across, and that's the answer, 225. And that concludes part 2 of the Algebra 1 STAAR test for 2021.